Good morning. All right, it's really my pleasure being here. God bless every one of each of you who made the time to be present, to learn, to educate, to provide, to help, and to support. As my brother Rashid had indicated, our family injustice occurred over 25 years ago. As a young mother, I could not accept the fact my child is no longer my child. I could not accept the fact that someone comes into your home, rip your heart out, and says you're no longer the parent, and to get on with your life. I believe a parent to have raised your children as had God intended to provide them love, security, and justice, to know and support them with the security so when they grow up to know that they do matter, they have a voice. My children's voice were taken away from them just because they were told that God had loved you because you were born to a Muslim family. Muslim family, go to hell. My children were brainwashed to believe that. My son who passed away had an accidental fall in the bathtub, wanted to answer the phone. My husband came from work at 3 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock. The phone was like 10 steps away from the bathroom. Back then, it's been with me. 25 years ago, it's like 25 seconds to me. You live with it every second of the day. You can't forget that you're a parent, or you can't accept that you're not that parent. As I went to answer the phone, as soon as I picked up the phone, I heard a loud thud. As I went and rushed to the bathroom, my son was unconscious. As I called in for my husband to wake up to call the EMS, those minutes, it felt like hours. My son was breathing. He was barely like shallow breathing. We took him to Oakwood Hospital. Oakwood Hospital says my son breathed on his own, but they don't know that. They assumed that my son had drowned. He did not have a scratch or bruise or anything to indicate of a fall or anything. I said my son didn't drown. There was not enough water in the bathtub to be drowned, but they assumed it was drowned. My son passed away on November 22nd. The accident, November 23rd. We buried our son. As we went to the cemetery to come home to find my almost 3-year-old son, Muhammad Ali, and my twin daughter, Suhair, she was 2 years old. They were at my mom's. I was at the cemetery. The CPS, the Department of Social Service came in, knocked. I mean, they just stormed the house. They didn't even knock on the door. My mom was she wasn't decent. They want to know which kids to take. My nephews and my nieces were at the same age. They only could call in, or Arabs look alike. Which child should we take? My mom recalled the trauma that my children went through when they heard their names, Muhammad Ali and Suhair. My son, Muhammad Ali, he went and hid behind the couch. My daughter Suhair did the same thing, crying out, "Mama, Mama, help me." I'm sorry. I wasn't there. I was burying my son. I was trying to, when we got to this, I said, "How could you do that?" "Oh, your child was killed." There was no evidence of a killing. There was no charges. There's nothing. 2 months later, I was charged with second-degree murder. My kids, as of the first visit when I saw them at the foster care, my son and my kid, Suhair and Muhammad Ali, they spoke only Arabic. Muhammad Ali came in and said very traumatized, asking, "Mama, what happened?" in Arabic. As I started to explain to my kids in Arabic, I was prevented by the Department of Social Service and threatened to speak English to my children. And I said, how can I comfort them? She said, well, we have to know what you're saying to them, because if you don't, we will terminate all visits. I could not comfort my kids with the only languages they know how. And I was expected to get on with my life. You've taken kids from the parents who abuses them. My children were not abused. They were abused at the foster care. For 3.5 years, they were kept them in the same home. My children came up with all these bruises, cigarette burns. Now they speak English. Now they are talking about their abusers. The social worker, the foster care social worker, they would call my kids liars. That your foster mother doesn't do that to you. As I brought this to the attention of the Department of Social Service, they threatened me if I do, they would remove my children to Grand Rapids and for me never to see them again. And I would hear saying, well, we'd rather see bruises on your children than seeing them killed. I said that for your information, my child who you assumed or you thought I've killed, he did not have a bruise on him and I was acquitted. By then, the Department of Social Service made a plan after my acquittal that the children should be placed home. Even though my parents were denied to have my children, my relatives, my brother from the community, they were denied to be put in a home with their familiar surrounding. The children guardian ad litem from the state, he's supposed to work for the best interest of the children. He did not do that when it came into my kids. I said to them, I said, if you are angry at me, don't punish my children. If you're angry at me because I was acquitted, I mean, the same medical examiner, when he said that Samir, with his injury, there's no way it could happen from just a fall in a bathtub. He has to be fallen from 3 to 40 stories building high. He gave an hypothetical explanation to a jury. And he said that the injury was so severe, he has to be hit by a truck. My son did not have any injuries for that assumption to be happened, even though the medical examiner said back then, for this to happen, he has to have injuries, broken bones, organs. And then when he was asked, did you see anything internally or externally on the child? He says, no. And he says, how could you say it was a homicide? He stood mute. A jury took them 10 minutes. 10 minutes. They came up with not guilty verdict. And then as I stood and I believed I'm getting my kids back, I'm pregnant with my 4th child, thinking I'm getting Muhammad Ali into your home. My children were punished so badly. Not only if they are being affected, their future children would be affected. They were brainwashed that God loved you to be taken from your loving family because they're Muslims. Well, Jesus, peace be upon him, that I know he would never go along. What happened to my kids, what happened to my kids was that God was out of God's love, was out of evil. Because you're prejudiced, you discriminate, and this is not right. 4 months later, I gave birth to my daughter, beautiful little girl. They said they're not gonna take her. They came in with a piece of paper saying we have a hearing, asking the court to take her. And I said, why? My husband was next to me. They said, no, we're not gonna take her now, but we're gonna ask because even though you were acquitted, but we don't believe this is beyond the reasonable doubt court issue. I said, it's not I was acquitted because there was no evidence against me. I was acquitted because there was no evidence of a killing to begin with. There was nothing. And she said, wouldn't care. As my husband went outside the hospital to call our attorney, they came in, had my baby wrapped in a blanket. They said, do you want to say goodbye to her? I promised my daughter, as I held her and I whispered, I'm not gonna give up on her. I will get her home. Now we are 25 years later, my children are brainwashed. They don't want to be home. They believe that God loved them to be taken away from us. The state brainwashed them. They admitted to a judge and said the two older children went to therapy for 7 years to accept that their brother was murdered by their mother. And now they have accepted and they live fine. To tell them that their brother had bone disease that would cause conflict and would cause the children trauma so they won't get on with their lives. Judge was really, she said she has no jurisdiction. She did not believe in the theory of the state. She had no way of reopening the case. Then in 2002, in September, I and my husband, really, I just said, we need to do something. Thought to exhume my son. I said, you know, why is the medical examiner office and hospital destroyed everything? Why they kept, 10 years later, we gotten some of the records, but not the skull x-ray. What's going on? And I said, I believe that God had preserved, and then He's my witness, and whatever the state and the hospital conspired to destroy, God will preserve. Even though 17 years later, after I buried my son, as a parent, it is so hard to bury a child once. I had to do it twice to save my children. I exhumed my son's remains. God preserved him. So my son cried from the grave, not only for his sibling, for each child out there. 22 years later, my son's death certificate got amended. Judge Edward Thomas, God bless him, circuit court judge, he said, as he has been 27 years on the bench, he has not seen a case like ours. It was like they legalized kidnapping when it came into the Amer children. He ordered Wayne County to amend the death certificate. And now my son's death certificate says his death was accidental, not homicide, but still my children are not willing to accept it. My oldest son, Muhammad Ali, named Adam Lee Stamper, a year ago he started accepting it after the Arab American Student Union held their 6th annual banquet and honor us for the Amer law passed, as well as the death certificate. They flew my son as a surprise. It was just a miracle. By then I had my son law, and it took us 5 years, and it was passed and signed on December the 14th, 2010. As Jennifer, our former governor, Jennifer Granholm, looked at it and says, this is not gonna, God help me all these years. And I said, my son was preserved, and he cried out for every child out there from the grave. There's a message, it needs to be done, and it needs to be fulfilled. If all of the pains that I and my family endured, it would prevent our family just to happen. I am thankful to God. All I went through to prevent and to set laws to further protect those voiceless there's no laws we have to protect those innocent. There isn't any. God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. God bless.
I think she deserves a round of applause.